Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I'm Jordan Jones, back here today, recording on Sunday evening right after Jaden Ivey's second career game-winning three-pointer against the Ohio State Buckeyes. That shot to save the day capped off a 2-0 week for Purdue basketball when they really needed a couple of wins. Now, we're at the proverbial turn to the back nine of the Big Ten season, which is really a back 10 with the 20-game schedule. Purdue is 7-3, just one game back in the standings as they look for Big Ten championship number 25. Plenty of thoughts from the week that was are ahead here. We'll look at the Big Ten race, preview the upcoming week, including a special guest from up north in Michigan, to talk about a couple of games that are on the horizon for Purdue. And then, as always, a few random thoughts to top it off. Before we get going here, as always, follow the show on Twitter at BoilersBeyond. Tons of stuff there, always tweeting through games. Anytime there's news in the college basketball world as a whole, I'm tweeting about it, talking Big Ten. So be sure to follow over there for more content. And subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We are pretty much everywhere. So be sure to subscribe. We're here all season. You're not going to want to miss it. As today reminded everyone, it's a roller coaster ride of a season, and we're going to be here through all of it. So follow and subscribe, and let's dive right in to this week. Purdue went up to Iowa on Thursday and really took care of business well. I thought Purdue played a pretty good game up there. It's certainly a different team to play against. Iowa's style is so contrary to what you normally see in the Big Ten. Fran McCaffery is just a very different human being from most Big Ten coaches. But I thought Purdue did a good job of weathering the storm. When Iowa came back, Purdue really was able to answer on some big-time three-pointers to prevent Iowa from taking the lead, or I think 4 was as close as it got. So Purdue did a good job of hanging in there and weathering a bit of a storm, wore out the Murray brothers by the end, and as I put on Twitter, Connor McCaffery is the gift that keeps on giving for Purdue. He's now 2 for 25 from 3 against Purdue in his career, and you saw Purdue really put that one away when they had to put McCaffery in. The Murray brothers were gassed, and Purdue's able to put their 5 on him and completely sag off. Ideally, you do not want that to be the way Purdue is able to play you, because if you can play small, you can exploit a major weakness, and Connor McCaffery allowed Purdue to really limit what Keegan Murray could do down the stretch. Purdue closed that game out. What they didn't do well was close out against Ohio State on Sunday. 81-78, Purdue wins a thriller on CBS national TV. Look, Purdue struggled to put it away late. There is no doubt about that. Purdue led by 20 at one point in the second half, and I think Purdue led by 11 or 12 with a couple minutes remaining. But Ohio State hit tough shot after tough shot. Some of them were open, but anytime you hit a big shot late in games, it's going to be tough. E.J. Liddell was massive for them down the stretch, but Jaden Ivey fixed that. He drills a really hard fadeaway with, half a second left to send Purdue home victorious and really save the day for Purdue fans who were certainly on edge late in that game. Let's dive in to some thoughts from this week. And one thing I wanted to point out is so much of the narrative, I always maintain that Jeff Goodman puts out his list of the craziest fan bases in college basketball. Purdue not being on there is criminal. Purdue's 18-3 right now, so at one point they were 16-3, and the biggest thing the fan base is talking about is how the point guards aren't any good, how Isaiah Thompson and Eric Hunter aren't any good. Well, I think this week maybe they heard the criticism. They both had a really nice week. Isaiah Thompson, 18 points up in Iowa. He led Purdue in scoring. That's pretty good. Uh, Even up there as well, Eric Hunter had 7 points. He was really good. He started the last 2 games with Jaden Ivey not starting due to his injury. And then on Sunday at Mackey Arena, we've got Eric Hunter with 10 points, 3 rebounds, 5 assists. That's a pretty complete game. It wasn't Isaiah Thompson's best day, but I think those two are really playing well right now, especially Eric Hunter. And that's big for Purdue. I'm not sitting here, when I defend them, I'm not saying that Purdue doesn't need anything from them, but when they're able to produce like this and when they're able to score and give Purdue just another threat on the offensive end, that takes this team to another level. Now, Hunter's a pretty good defender, I think. He probably should have been all Big Ten defensive team last year. You'd love to see him keep this up here. Finish his career strong. Obviously, I don't think he's a pro player, but he can really put a nice cap on his Purdue career and end on a really positive note. Isaiah Thompson as well. One thing that I really noticed in his game, a couple times in that Iowa game, he brought that floater out, and that's a nice shot of his. I kind of forgot about that. If you remember 2 years ago when he was a freshman, he had a game at Michigan where he scored a bunch, and the floater was a huge part of that. I really kind of had forgotten about that, but he had a really nice game, and of course, he's a great three-point shooter. Over 40% on the year. You can't leave him open. You have to respect that part of his game. So these guys haven't been bad at all this season, and really in the last 2 games, I think they've been very good. Now, let's go back to 2017 here. It's January or February. Time kind of is far enough away now that I don't remember exactly, but Purdue's on their way to a Big Ten championship, and Basil Smotherman up and leaves the team. Now, I don't remember everything around that. He certainly wasn't playing as much as he'd hoped, but Smotherman leaves the team, and a scholarship opens up for Sasha Stefanovic. How big was that? I don't remember if I talked about this last year or not, because I know I've had this thought before, but that is one of the bigger moments in Purdue basketball that doesn't really get talked about, even though it probably should. Smotherman certainly wasn't the most productive player at Purdue. Nothing against him. I just don't think it really worked out the way anyone had hoped. He really wasn't doing much, and he decided to up and leave. So Purdue takes this scholarship and gives it to Stefanovic, who had no other high major offers. I think at this point it's pretty clear he would have gone to Valparaiso had he not gotten the Purdue offer, although there is some thought that he may have gone to a prep school and Purdue would have taken him in 18. But that 2017 recruiting class produced Nogel Eastern, Matt Harms, Aaron Wheeler, Eden Ewing, if you want one heck of a name when you look at Purdue basketball guys who really didn't do much, and Sasha Stefanovic. Now, 3 of those guys transferred, Eastern, Wheeler, Harms. I don't really remember what happened to Ewing. I mean, I'm pretty sure he failed off the team, but I can't be positive. I don't like saying that without his academic records in front of me, but I think there are academic problems there. And Stefanovic has been incredible for Purdue. It's probably a good thing I didn't have the podcast back then, because I'd seen him play in high school quite a bit, and I don't know that I appreciated his game enough. I saw him struggle his junior year in the regional against my high school, Warsaw, and I watched him have a good game his senior year, but nothing that really made me think he's a Big Ten lock. And my goodness, is he a Big Ten lock? He has been absolutely massive. It is pretty remarkable. John Rothstein tweeted this after the game, and I never would have thought this, but Purdue is 30-5 when Sasha Stefanovic scores in double figures. That's pretty remarkable. This is his first year averaging double figures, so I guess it makes sense. But, he's scoring 12.5 a game right now, shooting 42% from three, 85% from the foul line. That's pretty remarkable. He's your best post feeder by far, and that's really not something that gets appreciated enough with how important that is in Purdue's system. You have two big men who get the ball a lot on the block or near the block, and Stefanovic is your best guy to get that ball to them. Pretty remarkable, just looking back, though. Eastern was your crown jewel of that recruiting class. That didn't work out. Harms, Wheeler, both did some good things at Purdue, but ultimately found better fits elsewhere. Eden Ewing was a nightmare, but Sasha Stefanovic getting that scholarship from Basil Smotherman, that is massive and is something that was a huge blessing in disguise for Purdue. Now, Jaden Ivey, of course, Sunday's hero. He went for 21 points in this game, 8 of 20 shooting. So some of that you just have to live and die with. You have to put the ball in his hands, and you have to let him have a high volume. He is that good. Sometimes does he take some out-of-control shots? Absolutely. He has to. That's his game. He gets to the basket. He's never found a transition opportunity he doesn't like. We saw that a couple times in this game where the numbers certainly were not in his favor, and he drives with it. That's just a Jaden Ivey experience. He's an athlete that I don't know that we've ever seen at Purdue. Just uber athletic, uber talented at finishing around the rim. You can't say enough good things about Jaden Ivey, and you have to live and die with him. You just have to. That shot at the end of the game, it's the same spot on the floor that he took the one at Indiana that didn't go in that would have sent it to overtime. Look, you're just going to give it to him. I think the longer this season plays out, the more you're going to see the ball in his hands, and he'll get back to the starting lineup. I know some folks like to look into that a lot. I'm kind of with Coach Painter that I don't know that it's the most important thing, but I would assume Jaden Ivey will be back in the lineup at Minnesota on Wednesday. Mason Gillis, absolute unsung hero. How many times have we said that this season or last even? It's not like he scored a ton in this game. He had 7 points, just 2 for 5 from the field, but 11 rebounds, 5 of them on the offensive end. The guy's a scrapper. He plays incredibly hard. He's a guy that Purdue fans naturally absolutely love because he represents so much of what Purdue basketball has been over the years. I don't think this team is necessarily that. I don't think this team's anything like a lot of past Purdue teams. But Gillis is kind of that blast from the past, gritty, hard work kind of guy. Purdue doesn't win this game without him. Extending possessions, hit a nice bucket under the basket on an offensive rebound. Purdue doesn't win this game without him. And even when he struggled a little bit against Iowa on Thursday, Caleb First had a nice game behind him. Ethan Morton did a nice job in his place. So that 4 spot's productive. Gillis is your main guy there, but you just can't say enough about how good he's been, especially when you consider what he went through. Missed his whole senior year of high school with an injury, missed a lot of time during his redshirt season with an injury, so things haven't always been great for him, but certainly now he is playing at a very high level and is a key part of this team. Obviously people are upset about Purdue losing the lead late in that Ohio State game. Ohio State's a pretty good team. They really didn't shoot the ball well, early on especially. They finished the game 9 for 29 from 3, I think. 31%. They were well worse than that early on. They were 2 for 13 at the half. So you knew they were going to have some regression to the median a little bit. E.J. Liddell hit 2 massive threes late. He's a great player. There's not much to say there. Matt Painter was talking about how he's an absolute pro in his post-game press conference. He's probably right there. I do think Malachi Branham, he's going to be a star in this league. He was really good for them. Put in 20 points on 10 shots. Had 7 rebounds. He's going to be really, really good. Just a freshman for them. He's going to be a problem for a lot of teams. He had that crazy game against Nebraska earlier this year and, has had a few ups and downs. But I think as a whole, he's going to be really good. And, one thing they're able to do is with Kyle Young, he can play the 5. And they torched Purdue doing this in the Big Ten tournament last year. They plug Young in at the 5 and let him go to work. And he can knock down those threes like he did at Lucas Oil Stadium last year and really stretch you out. And Purdue doesn't have a great answer for that. It's a little bit of an Achilles heel. We saw it as well against Iowa. I mean, my goodness, when Chris Murray was at the 5, there's nothing about Chris Murray that is a 5. I mean, he's not a center. But when you're able to plug and play him there, Purdue can't defend that. That's the trade-off you make when you play as big as Purdue does and when your centers are as good as Purdue's are. I mean, you can criticize playing that big, but when you have Zach Edey putting in, what did he have, 20 points against Ohio State? Yeah, Zach Edey scores 20 points on 9 shots from the field. Travion Williams pulls down 8 rebounds in only 19 minutes. I mean, when you have those guys, you got to use them. They're great players. But sometimes that doesn't always work out on the other end. And I don't always think that Purdue does a great job of flipping that. Teams do a really good job of clogging up the lane when they play small and really making those guys make good decisions with the ball. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But that's certainly an area where it's an Achilles heel. Another Achilles heel, and our good friends at Mackey Maniacs tweeted in about this, free throw shooting. Goodness gracious. Purdue missed 23 free throws this week. 12 against Iowa, 11 against Ohio State. That is a problem, folks, and I don't think it's a blip. I think it's a legitimate reason for concern moving forward. I don't really know what's going on with Zach Edey there. Last week on the show, I hypothesized a bit that he hadn't played in front of crowds before. Maybe that's a factor. And while it certainly may be, he's really struggling at the foul line. Started off 2 for 7 on Sunday before he hit his final 4. I'm pulling up his stats right now to see where he is on the season at the foul line. 64% on the year. That's down from 71% last year. Not great. Part of his value is that he gets fouled a boatload. I heard Matt Painter say on the radio postgame that Purdue centers got fouled 13 times against Ohio State. Well, when you're going to the line and your centers, Edey and Williams, combined to go 7 for 16, 6 for 11 for Edey, 1 for 5 for Williams, that's a problem. I don't really understand how Travion Williams has never improved a whole lot at the foul line, but he hasn't. That's probably just who he is at this point. That's probably more of a matter-of-fact thing than anything else, but yeah, it's certainly not what you want. And moving forward, that's another spot. Teams can play small. That's an area where teams could get you in March, and Purdue's free throw shooting could cannibalize itself in March. Those are just a couple of things to look at. Purdue's not a very good defensive rebounding team. I think that is been very evident all season, especially in these 2 games. Iowa had 14 offensive rebounds on Thursday, Ohio State 12 on Sunday. Look, Purdue runs away from the Ohio State game if Ohio State doesn't get offensive rebounds. And Purdue blows Iowa out of the gym if Iowa was down 15 at half, I think, and I think they had 9 offensive rebounds. I mean, think about what that could have been if Iowa didn't have those second chance points early on. So Purdue's got to box out better. I know Travion Williams doesn't necessarily box out. He just goes and gets the ball. But Purdue just has to be better there. Did have a question as well about Ethan Morton, and I thought it's a good point to bring up because we've really seen his versatility, especially in that Iowa game when Mason Gillis is in foul trouble. Caleb First is a poor matchup due to his size. Caleb First is more of a 5 than a 4, and he's playing exclusively the 4 for the most part. And against a team like Iowa, whose 4 is Keegan Murray, boy, that's tough. That's really tough. So Ethan Morton's versatility to plug him at the 4, massive for this team. Drilled a couple of nice threes, 1 in each game this week. In rhythm, very nice. He has a nice shot. Right now, I know folks have pointed at him as the solution at point guard for the problem that may or may not exist, depending who you talk to. He's not there right now. He's not ready to be a 1 for Purdue. Maybe he could be in the future, in the same sense that Nojel Eastern was a 1 for Purdue. But for now, he's just doing a really nice job of filling gaps, plugging and playing, and doing what's asked of him. And really, he's leapfrogged Brandon Newman in the rotation. 2 games this week, 2 DNPs, coach's decision for Brandon Newman. I don't know if that's what I expect moving forward, but I certainly don't expect to see a whole lot of him. Let's put it that way. All right. As I said earlier, we're making the turn here. 10 games down, 10 games to go in Big Ten play. Purdue's 1 game back, 7-3. Illinois on top of the conference at 8-2. And goodness, did they dodge a couple of close ones this week. One of them, that Michigan State game, was a really impressive win for Illinois. They were without Andre Curbelo. They were without Kofi Cockburn. And they were able to win that game. That was a huge win for them. And they came back late to beat Northwestern up in Evanston in the battle to be Chicago's Big Ten team. So the Illini are 8-2, and also Wisconsin sits there at 8-2. Now, I don't believe in this Wisconsin team one bit. Johnny Davis is good. He's very good. He is an All-American type player based off what he's done so far. He's all they have. I would be shocked if they get a split of the Big Ten championship. I think they're due for some serious positive regression. I mean, when you look at point differential, just, how much they win their games by, they're middle of the pack Big Ten. I mean, even Northwestern on the season has a better point differential than Wisconsin. So I think they're due to regress at some point. They've won a bunch of close games. Then again, they scrapped their way by winning a bunch of close games to a Big Ten title in 2020. So I guess you never know. Michigan State's right there with Purdue at 7-3, as someone else there as well. As is, I guess, Ohio State is 6-3 right now. So it's a crowded room in the Big Ten. Looking at some other stuff from this weekend, Maryland clearly made the right call moving on from Turgeon. Indiana walked in there and dog-walked them. And Maryland just had zero fight. I don't think Danny Manning is your long-term solution there. And just from a resume perspective, Purdue will take every Rutgers win that it can get. They won on Saturday evening. It was a nail-biter against a awful Nebraska team. Hoiberg's buyout, $18 million. Goodness gracious, what a mess for Trev Alberts to deal with. But you want Rutgers to win as much as possible. As much as Purdue people don't like it, you want Indiana to win as much as possible. And you want Wisconsin to stay in a quad 1 loss. So if you can have Indiana will be a quad 1 loss, you want Wisconsin to stay in quad 1, and Rutgers to stay in quad 2, that's not half bad. For a 3-loss team, I think at least 15-5 gets you at least a share this year. I do think Wisconsin and Illinois have 3 more losses in them, but if Illinois were to win at Mackey Arena, they're absolutely in the driver's seat for the Big Ten race. Had a question about that. Purdue certainly has a shot. They're right there. They just need to continue winning. They've won a couple games in a row here, 3 in a row, and it's a great time for them to go on a win streak. That win streak can continue Wednesday up at Minnesota. That is a 7 p.m. tip-off in a nightmare zone for Purdue over the years. 2010, obviously. 2019, that was a loss that Carson Edwards shot them out of that I thought was going to cost them part of a Big Ten championship. Last year, Marcus Carr hit a ridiculous shot to beat Purdue there. Ben Johnson, new coach up there, Purdue's first time playing against him. He's done a heck of a job this season. That team was pieced together through the transfer portal, and I don't think they're immensely talented, but they play hard. They took Wisconsin to the brink today. They took Ohio State to overtime. Or no, that was Nebraska, sorry. But Minnesota's played a lot of teams hard. They beat Rutgers at home. Purdue should win that game going away, but Minnesota's going to give them a heck of a game, and they're not going to give up. And then Saturday, Purdue hosts Michigan. We have a guest here momentarily to talk about that. It's been a disappointing season for Michigan. They still have a lot of talent. You saw it last weekend when they went to Indiana and smoked the Hoosiers right after they beat Purdue. So they're a threat. We are about to talk to Adam Sadowski, and we will be back to wrap this podcast up. All right. We're joined here today by Adam Sadowski, the biggest Michigan fan I know. He knows more about Michigan athletics than anyone I know. Adam, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Jordan. It's good to be on. Definitely always wanted to be on the pod, so I can't wait to get into it today.
All right. Well, as we know, Purdue and Michigan have a pair of games coming up now. I think 2 games in 5 days against each other after the rescheduled game that Michigan had to cancel due to COVID earlier this year. Talk a little bit about the Wolverines and where they're at. I know expectations were high coming in. They haven't necessarily lived up to them, but where are you at right now with this Michigan team?
Yeah. I mean, you hit it right on the head there. Michigan, as we know, has not met expectations that we had for them to start the season. You know, a lot of people had them toward the top 5, top 10 in their polls. Definitely just haven't lived up to expectations. And yesterday was a tough loss to Michigan State. Really, a really good summary of a lot of Michigan's season was in how they played that game yesterday. First half started pretty strong, got up 6 at one point, and just tailed off in the second half and couldn't find rhythm offensively to kind of finish off the game there. And we've seen that a lot in this Michigan season. They're, I believe, plus 90 points in the first half and negative 40 or 45 in the second half. It's an alarming stat there when your team can't finish down the stretch. So we've just kind of been searching for an identity offensively, and that's been the ongoing battle this year. And it's kind of been a rough go so far.
Purdue fans can certainly relate with struggling down the stretch of games. We're recording this after the Ohio State game where Purdue let up a lead late, but Purdue's done well at hanging on. You know, with Michigan, they have a very talented roster, a couple of 5-star freshmen. Hunter Dickinson, everyone knows about him and what he can do. So talk about that a bit with the roster they have. You know, talk about some of the personnel stuff going on up at Michigan.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. It's been kind of a puzzle, it seems like, trying to figure out this lineup. Mainly offensively, they've kind of been challenged. And a lot of people had different expectations for Caleb Houston coming into this season. Top 5, top 10 player in the country. Very gifted, but seems to be kind of still maybe developing a jump shot a bit. And that's not really something that we had expected coming into this year. He initially, maybe through the first 10 or 15 games of the season, I mean, he really struggled. And now he's finally starting to find his footing. He had 19 points against IU, hit 4 threes in that game, had 18 points against Northwestern. So he's starting to come into his own. He's had double digits in each of his last 4. And the emergence of Caleb Houston is going to be really important for this Michigan team as they really get into the meat of their schedule here with Purdue a couple times. I know we've got Michigan State again coming down the line here. And we're going to need to see him step up and be a core part of this offense. And it's something that when he's playing well, Michigan is really a much better team. They can stretch the floor better. And with Caleb playing better, Michigan will play better. So that's something we really need to see. And Moussa Diabate has actually been a real surprise for a lot of people. A lot of people were expecting him to be more so of a guy who needs to develop a bit, very talented, very high ceiling, but he stepped into a big role for Michigan and taken a role that a lot of people thought Brandon Johns Jr. would have at Michigan. And Brandon has not played more than 10 minutes in quite a few games here. So Moose has taken on a role that's been really a bright spot for Michigan. And as we all know, Hunter Dickinson's been a solid, reliable guy for Michigan. And I think with him being a focal point in the offense, it really allows Michigan to stretch the floor. And if they're not feeding Dickinson inside and establishing that post presence, the guys just aren't that open on the outside and on the perimeter there. So I think playing through Dickinson and keeping a hot, confident Caleb Houston ready to shoot the ball is going to be very key in this Michigan season down the stretch here, Jordan.
So looking at Michigan right now, you're middle of the pack Big Ten. I know you're on the wrong side of the bubble right now. How do you see it going? Do you see Michigan being, a team that gets into the NCAA tournament that can wind up, in that 7-8 spot in the Big Ten, or do you see them kind of falling out and, having certainly a disappointing season at the end of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I do see Michigan finding a way to make the tournament. And of course, maybe that's a little bit of the fan in me speaking, but I do think they have the pieces to really put this together. They have the talent. We've seen it. They shot 40% from 3 against Maryland and then 60% against Indiana. And when Michigan's hitting threes, they're a dangerous team. Of course, that can be said about a lot of teams, but it seems to really be the case with Michigan when they're shooting well from the outside. It really adds another phase to their game. So Michigan does have a chance to improve its resume here. We have 2 games against Purdue, going to match up with Michigan State again. And there are always chances in the Big Ten to bolster your resume. And you win a couple games in the Big Ten tournament and maybe match up with one of the better teams in the conference. So there are going to be chances for this Michigan team to cement itself and really make the tournament. So there are going to be those chances. It's gonna take a good offensive showing here. They haven't struggled much defensively. Yesterday was certainly an issue defensively, giving up 83 points to Michigan State. I think if they can stop the ball in transition and kind of, like I said before, get Houston involved, and same with Hunter Dickinson. And if they're playing well, I think this Michigan team can be dangerous. But it's going to take a good showing of improvement here offensively if this team's going to do it. They're going to have to get hot here pretty quick. I know it's not looking great right now, probably last 4-in type situation right now, but there's a chance. I'm going to say they're going to do it, probably end up in a 8 or 9 seed spot, but I don't know if this is a Michigan team that's going to make a deep run in March. I'm not necessarily seeing that this year, unfortunately, Jordan.
Absolutely. When that game back in early January up in Ann Arbor got pushed back, my initial reaction was not great for Purdue just because you have more time for that Michigan team to come together. So now 2 games in a span of 5 days. Purdue has Illinois at home sandwiched in between those. That is a massive stretch for Purdue. I know you've watched a decent amount of Purdue this year. How do you think Michigan matches up with Purdue?
It's going to be what's really going to be interesting, in my opinion, is of course the battle of the bigs. I mean, that might be where this game is won and lost, in my opinion. Hunter Dickinson is always going to battle with whoever he's matched up with, and with Purdue having Travion Williams and of course Zach Edey, it's going to be something that you really got to keep your eye on. If Purdue's rebounding the ball well, which they do typically do, they rebound the ball better than Michigan. It's something that we've seen this year, and I think Michigan will kind of match up just fine inside with Purdue. I do think Michigan's lack of depth is probably going to be where we get hurt most. Purdue can send fresh bodies in there and have a fresh big man in the post. And I feel that Purdue is a little more deep than Michigan. I feel like they get more valuable minutes from a couple more guys. Michigan was hoping to have that depth from people like Brandon Johns, but haven't really seen it, unfortunately, this year. I think Jaden Ivey's going to get his. I really do. Devontae Jones has kind of struggled with fouling this year. Early season, he fouled out of multiple games, was struggling to defend more dynamic guards, really struggled in the Seton Hall game, notably back in November. So I think that that Jaden Ivey's going to get his, and I think Purdue's depth is really going to wear on Michigan. And I kind of see if Purdue can get out in transition and make that a focal point of their game, it's gonna go in their favor, and it's gonna hurt Michigan. So I think those are a couple key areas where this game could be won and lost.
All right. Well, I know the listeners are certainly going to like hearing that as a Purdue crowd. That's Adam Sadowski. Adam, thank you so much for joining me, and I'm looking forward to seeing you this weekend.
Yeah, of course, Jordan. Cannot wait to be back in West Lafayette and have a good time this weekend. But thank you very much for having me on. It was a pleasure.
All right. Thank you to Adam Sadowski for joining us to preview the game. Excited to see him this weekend for that matchup at Mackey Arena after a snowstorm comes through the area. I wanted to hit on a few random points before we wrap up here. Report from The Athletic this week, I think it was Scott Docterman, that the Big Ten was looking at scrapping its football divisions and moving to just a normal, 14-team conference. And look, I mean, if this happens, Purdue certainly will miss the West. The West is a much more walkable path to Indianapolis. Not that it's easy for Purdue, who hasn't done that yet. But if they're going to, the West is certainly the easiest way there. You miss out on probably the 3 best programs in the Big Ten every year. So that's certainly something that would be felt throughout the conference. Now, what I have seen is that they would still protect rivals, and a few guys I've seen have projections that Purdue's protected rivals would be Illinois, Indiana, and Northwestern. If that's the case, sign Purdue up, because you're not going to get a more favorable set of protected opponents than that. That would be great. You're going to have to deal with tougher, you're probably not going to have seasons where you don't play either Ohio State or Michigan anymore. Very few or far between, but if those are your protected rivals, it helps. I think the point that Docterman brought up, that they could go to an 8-game conference schedule to get a game in with the Pac-12 ACC alliance, yes. Purdue would love to get an 8-game Big Ten schedule as opposed to 9. And that'd be great if the Big Ten decides that they're going to do the scheduling alliance, because that's a Power 5 game that you're going to play every year, and you can load up the rest of your non-conference schedule with winnable games, or at least 2 of those 4 need to be games that you should absolutely win. Against a MAC school, yes, against an FCS school, I don't care, play them. Your job is to get to a bowl game. Your job is to not, impress the strength of schedule. Your strength of schedule means nothing if you're 4-8. And I think some people like that. Some people want to play a tough schedule. I know Jeff Brom and I don't see eye to eye there. But if that's the case, I think Purdue puts itself in an all right position to go to bowl games. If you can have a couple of, should win non-conference games, protected rivalries against Illinois, Indiana, Northwestern, and then you see where the schedule takes you. With no divisions, you'd be just as likely to play Maryland and Rutgers as you would be Wisconsin and Iowa. So you never know. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. On the football front as well, Nick Carraway, Purdue signee in the class of 2022, took a massive ride towards the top of the Rivals rankings, finishes at 105 nationally. That is remarkable. That is very, very impressive. He showed out really well at the All-American Bowl a couple weeks ago. I know that folks were very high on him there. He's going to be a stud at Purdue. I'll be interested to see if he's on the field this fall. I think Purdue's okay at those spots. You got Jack Sullivan. You have Kydron Jenkins. You have Joseph Anderson. You have a few guys there that can rush the passer. You just picked up Scotty Hempich from Murray State. But, man, between him and Joe Strickland, Purdue has a couple of really good pass rushers coming in this class. And then finally, one of the stories in college athletics this week was Louisville parting ways with Chris Mack abruptly. I think he was 4 years in there, and it just went very, very poorly. He never got off the ground, and now they're paying him a massive buyout. This comes at the time when one of the massive pushes was to fire Scott Satterfield, their football coach, after this year. Now, right now, I don't think they have a university president, and I know they don't have an athletic director. And they have a basketball hiring to do, and they are very unhappy with their football coach. Obviously, we saw it on Twitter this fall when they were hoping to fire Satterfield. Jeff Brom's going to be their number one hope. They want Brom. They love Brom. He is their favorite son down there. Look, if Brom leaves Purdue to go to Louisville, that's a move that is entirely for him to go take on the challenge of coaching his alma mater. There is nothing more at this point that Purdue can do to keep him. I mean, sure, you can pay him more, and that's fine. I think a football coach is a good investment if he's winning, and he is. But at this point, Purdue has made this job appealing to Jeff Brom. I think it's a better job than Louisville right now, given how much of an absolute dumpster fire that athletic department is. I don't know what they'll do. Maybe Satterfield will have a nice year and this all goes away. I'm guessing here that there's a fair chance that Satterfield gets fired, just with how poorly things seem to be going down there. Maybe time to get ready for Brom to Louisville round 2, but if it happens, you just have to know that Purdue has done everything they can to make this job much better than it was when Brom took it back in December of 2016. All right, that's all I have for you today. Thank you for spending some time with me. We'll be back next week. 2 more games to break down and wrap up. Looking ahead to 3 games as the schedule tightens up. Plenty to talk about there. Be sure to follow the show on Twitter at BoilersBeyond. Plenty of thoughts and analysis from games and notes from around the country. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so that you don't miss an episode. Until next time, if you're around the Midwest like I am, get ready for this snowstorm, folks. It's coming.